Picture a chaotic airport terminal, Thanksgiving just days away, suitcases slamming and holiday jingles blaring. A woman steps into the first-class line, hoodie and sneakers, her calm cutting through the frenzy. The gate agent sneers, eyes raking her over, and barks, "You don't belong here." Maya Johnson flashes her ticket, seat 1A, first class, but he calls security anyway. They think she's nobody, just another face to push aside. Big mistake. She's carrying a secret that could crash a $5 billion empire. And this is Maya's story, a fight against prejudice that'll grip your soul. If it hits you, subscribe and tell us, where are you watching from? You won't believe what's next. The clock was ticking at JFK, and the terminal was a pressure cooker ready to blow. 3 days before Thanksgiving, New York's biggest airport churned with a chaotic symphony of clattering suitcases, barking gate agents, and the faint croon of jingle bells seeping from a Dunkin' Donuts stand. Travelers shoved through the crowd, clutching boarding passes like lifelines, their faces lit with the glow of holiday hope or holiday stress. But one woman stood apart, her calm slicing through the frenzy like a blade. Maya Johnson, 35, stepped into the priority check-in line for SkyHaven Airlines first-class passengers, her navy hoodie and worn sneakers drawing no attention. Yet, in her hand, a phone screen glowed with a boarding pass for seat 1A. In her bag, something heavier waited. A sealed envelope with a red wax stamp, its edges catching the light like a warning. Before she could reach the counter, a voice cut through the din, sharp and cold. "Hey, ma'am, you're in the wrong line." Maya froze, her eyes locking onto the gate agent behind the counter. Brandon Miller, barely 25, stood with his arms crossed, his SkyHaven vest crisp, but his sneer anything but professional. His gaze raked over her, hoodie, jeans, canvas tote, and landed somewhere between doubt and disdain. "This is for first class and business class only," he said, loud enough to turn heads. "Economy's that way." The line behind Maya went quiet, a dozen pairs of eyes boring into her back. She didn't flinch. Instead, she tilted her phone toward him, the boarding pass blazing. "Maya Johnson, first class, seat 1A. I think I'm exactly where I need to be," she said, her voice low, steady, but laced with a challenge that made Brandon's smirk falter. The terminal's holiday buzz faded, and for a moment, it was just the two of them, locked in a silent standoff that promised trouble. Brandon didn't back down. He leaned forward, squinting at Maya's phone like it was a forged dollar bill. "Hold up," he snapped, his fingers hovering over his headset. "Something's not right here." The words were a match tossed into dry grass, igniting whispers from the crowd. "What's her deal?" "Probably got the wrong ticket. Just move her out." Maya's jaw tightened, but her eyes stayed cool, scanning Brandon like she was memorizing every inch of his mistake. A woman in line, Emma Torres, mid-30s, with a leather jacket and a no-nonsense glare, stepped closer, her voice slicing through the murmurs. "Are you serious? She showed you the ticket. Scan it and move on." Brandon ignored her, muttering into his headset. "Yeah, need security at gate 17. Got a problem." The word security landed like a thunderclap, and Maya's fingers brushed her tote, where that red sealed envelope lay hidden, pulsing with secrets no one in this terminal could guess. The air grew thick, the holiday cheer smothered by the weight of Brandon's accusation. Maya stood her ground, her posture relaxed, but her gaze sharp enough to cut glass. "A problem?" she repeated, her tone soft but deadly, like the calm before a storm. "Care to explain what that is?" Brandon's cheeks flushed, caught off guard by her nerve. He fumbled with his computer, avoiding her eyes, but the damage was done. The crowd was watching now, some annoyed, others intrigued. Emma, still fuming, pulled out her phone, her thumb twitching toward the camera app. "This is ridiculous," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're holding up the whole line over nothing." A few travelers nodded, their grumbles adding fuel to the fire. But Maya didn't need their pity. She was already somewhere else, her mind racing ahead to a reckoning no one saw coming. Footsteps echoed as a security officer approached, his badge glinting like a warning shot. Jason Lee, young and stiff in his uniform, scanned the scene with wary eyes. "Ma'am, step aside, please," he said, his voice firm but tinged with unease, like he wasn't sure he wanted to be here. Maya raised an eyebrow, studying him for a beat too long. "Step aside for what exactly?" she asked, her words deliberate, each one a dare. Jason shifted, glancing at Brandon for backup. The gate agent jumped in, his voice louder now, defensive. "It's just routine, okay? We need to verify your ticket. Happens all the time." But the lie hung heavy, and even Jason seemed to sense it. His hand rested on his radio, hesitant, as if he could feel the ground shifting beneath him. Emma snorted, her phone now openly recording. "Routine my ass," she muttered, earning a glare from Brandon. Maya's lips curved, not quite a smile, but close enough to make Brandon squirm. She slid her phone across the counter, the boarding pass still glowing. "Verify it," she said, her voice smooth as silk, but with an edge that promised consequences. "I'll wait." Her fingers grazed her tote again, brushing that hidden envelope. A flash of red wax, catching Jason's eye for a split second. He blinked, curious, but Brandon was too busy doubling down to notice. "Scan it again," Brandon barked at Jason, his voice cracking with nerves. The machine beeped, green and final, first class confirmed. The crowd let out a collective breath, but Maya's eyes didn't leave Brandon's. They burned with something deeper, knowledge, power, maybe both. The PA system crackled. "Flight 214 to Chicago, boarding now," but no one moved. They were all caught in the gravity of Maya's gaze, sensing she was no ordinary passenger. Brandon's bravado crumbled under that stare. He shoved the phone back at Maya, his hands shaky. "Fine, go," he muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. Maya took her phone, her movements slow, deliberate, like a chess player setting up a checkmate. She glanced at Emma, who gave her a nod, a silent, "I've got your back." Then Maya turned to Jason, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "You might want to remember this moment," she said, her words cryptic, heavy with promise. Jason's brow furrowed, but he said nothing, his hands still on his radio. The crowd parted as Maya walked toward the jet bridge, her tote swinging lightly, that red envelope inside it like a ticking bomb. Behind her, Emma pocketed her phone, a smirk playing on her lips. The terminal's holiday lights flickered, but they couldn't touch the shadow Maya cast, a shadow that whispered of a storm about to break SkyHaven Airlines apart. The security checkpoint at JFK was a gauntlet of beeping scanners and barked orders, a maze of gray bins and impatient travelers under the glare of fluorescent lights. Thanksgiving was breathing down everyone's necks, and the air crackled with the stress of missed flights and overstuffed carry-ons. Maya Johnson stood at the edge of the chaos, her canvas tote slung over her shoulder, her face a mask of calm that hid a storm. Brandon Miller, the gate agent who'd already tried to shame her at check-in, hovered nearby, his smirk practically screaming trouble. He'd followed her from gate 17, whispering to a security officer like a kid tattling to a teacher. Now that officer, Jason Lee, young and rigid in his blue uniform, blocked Maya's path, his hand raised like a stop sign. "Ma'am, we need to check your bag," he said, his voice flat, but his eyes darting to Brandon for approval. Maya's gaze flicked between them, cool and calculating, as if she'd already seen the end of this game. "Check my bag?" Maya repeated, her tone light but laced with steel, each word a needle aimed at Brandon's ego. "Funny, I didn't hear that request for anyone else in line." The jab landed hard, and Brandon's smirk twitched, his cheeks reddening under the scrutiny of nearby travelers. Jason shifted uncomfortably, caught in the crossfire, but Brandon doubled down, his voice dripping with condescension. "It's random, okay? Standard procedure for certain passengers." The word certain slithered out like venom, and the crowd around them went still, catching the ugly undertone. A woman nearby, Emma Torres, her leather jacket creased from the weight, snapped her head up, her eyes blazing. "Random, huh?" she called out, loud enough to draw stares. "Looks pretty targeted to me." Brandon shot her a glare, but Emma just crossed her arms, daring him to push it. Maya didn't smile, but her eyes gleamed with a hint of approval, like she'd just found an ally in this circus. Jason motioned for Maya to hand over her tote, his movements stiff, like he was reading from a script he didn't believe. She complied, sliding the bag across the table with a grace that felt almost defiant. The crowd watched, some whispering, others pretending not to care as they shuffled through the metal detectors. Jason unzipped the tote, pulling out a water bottle, a paperback, and then his fingers froze. A thick envelope sealed with a red wax stamp. The logo Genesis Partners etched in gold. It looked like something out of a spy movie, heavy with secrets, and Jason's eyes widened, just for a second. "What's this?" he asked, holding it up like evidence. Brandon leaned in, his smirk back in full force. "Yeah, what's that? Looks suspicious to me." His tone was pure glee, like he'd caught her red-handed. But Maya didn't blink. "Work documents," she said, her voice smooth as glass. "Confidential. Want to open it and find out?" The challenge hung in the air, daring them to cross a line they didn't understand. Brandon's laugh was sharp, mocking, the kind of sound that made your skin crawl. "Confidential, sure," he said, rolling his eyes for the crowd's benefit. "Probably just some fancy letterhead to impress people." He nudged Jason, expecting a chuckle, but Jason didn't bite. His eyes were still on the envelope, his brow furrowed like he sensed something off. Emma, now openly filming with her phone, wasn't letting Brandon off easy. "You're real brave picking on one woman's bag," she said, her voice cutting through the checkpoint's hum. "What's next? You gonna frisk her for carrying a pen?" A few travelers snickered, and Brandon's face turned blotchy, his cool unraveling. He snapped at Emma. "Mind your business, lady." But it only made her grin wider, her camera steady. Maya watched it all, her expression unreadable, but her fingers tapped once against her thigh. A small tell that she was counting every move, every mistake. Jason set the envelope down, almost reluctantly, and rummaged through the rest of Maya's bag, finding nothing but a phone charger and a pack of gum. The search was a bust, and he knew it. "Looks clear," he muttered, glancing at Brandon like he was waiting for permission to end this charade. But Brandon wasn't done playing king. "Check it again," he hissed, his voice low but audible. "You know how these types slip through." The words were a gut punch, raw and ugly, and even Jason flinched. his hand pausing mid-motion. The crowd's whispers grew louder, a mix of shock and unease rippling through the line. Emma's voice boomed, no filter now. "Did you just say what I think you said? These types? You're done, buddy." Her phone stayed locked on Brandon, capturing every second of his meltdown. Maya's eyes met Emma's, a silent thank you passing between them. But her focus snapped back to Brandon, sharp as a blade. "You had him," Maya said, her voice quiet but piercing, cutting through the noise like a siren. "Check it again. I'm not in a rush." She leaned forward slightly, her gaze pinning Brandon to the spot. "But you might want to be careful what you dig for. Some things bite back." The warning was subtle, wrapped in velvet, but it hit like a shockwave. Jason's hand hovered over the bag, uncertainty creeping into his stance. Brandon's smirk was gone now, replaced by a flicker of doubt. Like he'd just stepped into a trap he couldn't see. The envelope sat untouched on the table, its red seal glowing under the lights, a silent promise of power no one but Maya understood. Emma lowered her phone just enough to murmur to the person next to her, "This guy's about to crash and burn." The crowd leaned in, sensing blood in the water, their holiday hustle forgotten. Jason finally stepped back, shaking his head. "It's clean," he said, louder this time, his voice carrying a hint of defiance. He slid the tote back to Maya, avoiding Brandon's glare. "You're good to go, ma'am." But Brandon couldn't let it go. He grabbed the envelope, holding it up like a trophy. "I'm keeping this for further inspection," he declared, his voice smug, desperate to save face. Maya's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, a spark of something dangerous flashed across her face. Not anger, but certainty. "That's a bad call," she said, her words slow, deliberate. "But go ahead, open it. See what happens." The checkpoint went dead quiet, every eye on that red seal, every ear straining for what came next. Emma's camera zoomed in, her breath catching as she whispered, "Oh, this is gonna be good." Maya's tote hung at her side, but her presence loomed large. A storm cloud ready to unleash hell on SkyHaven Airlines. The first-class cabin of SkyHaven Airlines Flight 214 was a cocoon of privilege, all plush leather seats and amber lighting that screamed money. Soft jazz trickled from hidden speakers, mingling with the clink of champagne flutes as passengers settled in, their faces glowing with the smug satisfaction of being above the fray. It was 3 days before Thanksgiving, and the vibe should have been warm, festive, but a chill was creeping in, sharp as a winter gust. Maya Johnson eased into seat 1A, her navy hoodie and sneakers stark against the cabin's polish. Her canvas tote rested at her feet, that red wax-sealed envelope still tucked inside, silent but heavy with promise. Across the aisle, Emma Torres adjusted her leather jacket, her eyes flicking to Maya with a nod of solidarity. But before Maya could exhale, a shadow loomed. Sarah Coleman, head flight attendant, her smile as fake as the tinsel on a discount Christmas tree. "Ma'am," Sarah said, her voice dripping with frost, "are you sure this is your seat?" The question was a slap, loud enough to hush the cabin's chatter. Every head turned, eyes pinning Maya like spotlights. Sarah stood tall, her blonde hair pinned tight, her SkyHaven badge glinting like a badge of superiority. Her smile didn't budge, but it was all teeth, no warmth, the kind of look that said you don't belong without saying it. Maya met her gaze, unflinching, her voice smooth as velvet, but edged with iron. "Pretty sure," she said, tapping her boarding pass on the armrest. Says 1A right here. Want to double check? The jab was subtle, but it stung, and Sarah's smile twitched, a crack in her perfect facade. Emma snorted softly, loud enough for Sarah to catch it, and leaned forward. Yeah, maybe read it twice, just to be safe, Emma said, her tone pure sarcasm, her eyes daring Sarah to push further. The cabin held its breath, sensing a fight brewing at 30,000 feet. Sarah didn't bite, at least not yet. She straightened, her lips pursing like she'd sucked a lemon, and turned to a businessman in 2B, her smile flipping back on like a switch. "Mr. Reynolds, warm towel?" she cooed, handing him a steaming cloth with a deference that bordered on worship. She moved down the row, serving towels and drinks with a pageant queen glow until she reached Maya. There she paused, her hand hovering over the towel tray, then pulled back, empty. "Oh, we're short," she lied, her voice saccharine, her eyes cold as marble. "I'll check later." The snub was blatant, a power play meant to humiliate, and the cabin silence roared with complicity. A woman in 3C smirked, whispering to her companion, "Figures." But Emma wasn't having it. "Short?" she called out, loud and clear. "You've got a whole stack right there. What's the deal?" Sarah's head snapped around, her mask slipping, and for a moment, raw irritation flashed across her face. Maya didn't react, not outwardly. She leaned back in her seat, her fingers brushing the edge of her tote, where that envelope waited like a loaded gun. "No worries," she said, her voice calm but cutting, each word a dart aimed at Sarah's pride. "I'm used to people underestimating what I'm entitled to. Happens all the time." The double meaning landed hard, and a few passengers shifted uncomfortably, catching the shade. Sarah's cheeks flushed, but she recovered fast, tossing her head with a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "Entitled's a strong word," she said, her tone mocking, meant to put Maya in her place. "Some folks just don't fit the vibe up here, you know?" The dig was vicious, and the businessman in 2B chuckled, egging her on. Emma's hand tightened on her armrest, her voice low but lethal. "Keep talking, lady. You're digging your own grave." The cabin buzzed with tension, every word a spark threatening to ignite. Sarah ignored Emma, turning away with a flick of her wrist, but the damage was done. She handed out menus next, her charm reserved for everyone but Maya, who got nothing, not even a glance. The message was clear: you're invisible unless I say otherwise. But Maya wasn't invisible. She pulled out her phone, her fingers dancing across the screen, typing something with a focus that felt dangerous. Emma caught it, leaning over the aisle. "You good?" she whispered, her eyes flicking to Sarah's retreating back. Maya nodded, a ghost of a smile playing on her lips. "Better than good," she said, her voice low, cryptic. Some people don't realize they're playing chess with a queen. The metaphor hung there, heavy with intent, and Emma's grin widened, like she'd just been let in on a secret. The cabin lights dimmed slightly, the jazz swelling, but the real music was the hum of a showdown about to explode. The tension simmered as Sarah returned, this time with a tray of drinks, sparkling water, wine, whiskey, offering them to every passenger with a syrupy, "Happy Holidays." Maya watched, her gaze steady, waiting. When Sarah reached her, she paused again, her tray tilting just enough to skip Maya's seat. "Oops, forgot yours," Sarah said, her voice pure venom wrapped in a smile. "I'll grab it later, if we have any left." The lie was so bold it stung, and the woman in 3C laughed outright. delighted by the cruelty. Emma was done playing nice. She stood halfway out of her seat, her voice booming. "Forgot? You're not even trying to hide it now. Give her the damn drink." Heads turned, gasps rippling through the cabin. Sarah froze, her tray trembling, her eyes darting to the galley like she wanted to bolt. Maya raised a hand, calm as ever, but her words were a guillotine. "It's fine, Emma. Let her keep her tray. She'll need something to hold on to when this flight lands." The threat was veiled, but it hit like a thunderbolt. Sarah's face drained of color, her smile gone, replaced by a flicker of fear she couldn't hide. The businessman in 2B stopped laughing, his eyes narrowing as he sensed something shift. Emma sank back into her seat, but her grin was triumphant, like she'd just watched Maya land a knockout punch. Maya leaned forward, her voice dropping to a near whisper, meant for Sarah alone. "Careful who you dismiss," she said. Her eyes locked on Sarah's. "Some of us have a way of turning the tables." She tapped her tote once, the gesture subtle but deliberate, a reminder of that red envelope and the power it held. The cabin seemed to shrink, the jazz fading into a distant hum as every passenger felt the weight of Maya's words. Sarah backed away, her tray rattling, her confidence crumbling like cheap tinsel. The plane soared on, but the real turbulence was just beginning, and Maya Johnson was at the controls. The first-class cabin of Flight 214 hummed with the low drone of engines and the clink of ice in cocktail glasses. But the air was thick with something uglier than turbulence. At 30,000 feet, the glow of Thanksgiving cheer was nowhere to be found. Not here, not now. Maya Johnson sat in seat 1A, her navy hoodie a quiet rebellion against the cabin's polished sheen. Her canvas tote rested at her feet, the red wax-sealed envelope inside it, like a heartbeat waiting to erupt. Across the aisle, Emma Torres scrolled on her phone, her leather jacket creased from the fight she'd already picked with Sarah Coleman, the head flight attendant. The jazz from the speakers felt like a cruel joke as a voice shattered the calm. Loud, grating, and unmistakably mean. "I didn't pay for this!" Richard Hayes barked from 2B, his face flushed with whiskey and entitlement. "Why's she up here? Anyway?" His finger jabbed toward Maya, and every eye in the cabin snapped to her. Richard's words were a grenade, lobbed to explode the fragile peace. A middle-aged businessman with a tailored suit and a sneer to match. He leaned forward, his voice carrying like he wanted the whole plane to hear. "This is first class, not a charity case," he said, his eyes locked on Maya, daring her to flinch. The cabin went dead quiet, the kind of silence that chokes you. Sarah Coleman, hovering near the galley, didn't miss a beat. Her lips curled into a smirk, her earlier frost toward Maya, now a full-on blizzard. "Some passengers do stand out, don't they?" she said, her tone syrupy but venomous, egging Richard on. A woman in 3C, a prim type with pearls, giggled, her hand covering her mouth like she was in on the joke. Maya didn't move, but her eyes burned, steady and unyielding, like a predator sizing up prey. Emma, though, was already halfway out of her seat, her voice a whip crack. "Say that again, pal. I dare you." Richard didn't hesitate, his ego too bloated to back down. "You heard me," he snapped, turning his glare on Emma now. "I've flown SkyHaven for years, and I've never had to sit next to someone who looks like that." He gestured at Maya's hoodie, her sneakers, his disgust plain as day. Sarah nodded, her smirk widening, as if she'd just been handed a free pass to pile on. "It's about maintaining a certain standard," she said, loud enough for the cabin to catch every word. "Not everyone gets that." The woman in 3C nodded eagerly, her pearls glinting like tiny daggers. The cabin was a pressure cooker, and Maya was at the center, her silence louder than any shout. Then she spoke, her voice low, precise, a blade slicing through the noise. "A standard," she said, her eyes flicking from Richard to Sarah. "Funny, I thought SkyHaven's standard was treating passengers equally. My mistake." The sarcasm hit like a thunderbolt, and a few passengers gasped, caught off guard by her steel. Sarah's smirk vanished, her face twisting with indignation. "Don't get smart with me," she hissed, stepping closer to Maya's seat, her tray of drinks forgotten. "You're lucky to be up here at all." The threat was naked now, no pretense left, and Richard clapped his hands, delighted. "Exactly! Put her in her place," he crowed, his whiskey glass sloshing as he leaned back, smug as a king. The woman in 3C whispered something to her companion, her laughter sharp and cruel. Emma wasn't laughing. She stood fully now, her phone in hand, the camera light blinking red. "Oh, you're done," she said, her voice shaking with fury. "Both of you, keep talking. I'm streaming this live. Let's see how SkyHaven likes the PR nightmare." The cabin buzzed, passengers shifting, some filming too, their murmurs rising like static. Maya raised a hand, calm as ever, but her eyes were fire. "No need to stream just yet, Emma," she said, her tone almost playful. "They're digging their own graves fast enough." The jab was surgical, and Sarah flinched, her tray rattling as she gripped it tighter. Richard, though, was too far gone to care. "Graves?" he scoffed, his voice slurring slightly. "You think you're somebody? Look at you. Nobody belongs here less than you." The insult was a gut punch meant to crush, and the woman in 3C clapped like it was a show. Sarah seized the moment, her voice rising with mock concern. "Sir, please, let's keep it civil," she said to Richard, but her eyes gleamed with approval, betraying her game. Maya leaned forward, her smile small but lethal. "Nobody?" she repeated, her words slow, deliberate. "That's a bold claim from a man who's already spilled half his drink on his tie." The cabin erupted, soft laughs, stifled gasps, a ripple of shock. Richard's hand flew to his tie, his face purpling as he realized she was right. Emma cackled, her camera still rolling. "She's got you there, buddy," she said, her grin fierce. Her support, a lifeline in the storm. Sarah's mask cracked, her voice trembling with rage. "You're out of line," she snapped at Maya, her finger jabbing the air. "I can have you removed from this flight, you know." The threat was desperate, a last-ditch grab for control, but it only made her look smaller. Richard nodded, egging her on. "Do it! Get her out!" he demanded, his voice hoarse, his entitlement laid bare. The woman in 3C chimed in, her voice shrill. "She's ruining the experience for everyone." The cabin was a powder keg, ready to blow, but Maya didn't budge. She reached into her tote, her fingers grazing that red envelope, her movements slow, deliberate, like a chess master setting up a checkmate. "Removed?" she said, her voice cool, almost amused. "Good luck explaining that to your bosses. I hear they're very interested in customer feedback these days." The hint was cryptic, loaded, and it sent a shiver through the cabin, like a predator's growl before the strike. Sarah's eyes widened, a flicker of fear breaking through her bravado. She opened her mouth, but no words came, her authority unraveling like a cheap sweater. Richard, oblivious, kept going, his voice a drunken rant. "Feedback? Who cares? People like you don't call the shots." His sneer was pure venom, but it was starting to sound hollow, like he sensed the ground shifting. Emma leaned across the aisle, her voice low but fierce. "Keep filming, folks," she said to the other passengers. Her phone still steady. "This is gold for the internet." A few nodded, their cameras out. The cabin now a stage for a reckoning. Maya's gaze locked on Sarah, then Richard, her smile gone, replaced by a look that could stop a heart. "People like me," she said, her voice soft but seismic. "You have no idea who I am, but you're about to find out." She tapped her tote once, the red envelope inside it, a silent promise of chaos, and the cabin fell silent. Every soul aboard, knowing they were witnessing the prelude to a storm that would shake SkyHaven to its core. The first-class cabin of Flight 214 was a pressure cooker at 30,000 feet. Its leather seats and crystal glassware, no match for the venom simmering beneath the surface. Thanksgiving loomed just days away, but gratitude was in short supply here. Maya Johnson sat in seat 1A, her navy hoodie a quiet defiance against the cabin's gilded glow. Her canvas tote lay at her feet, the red wax-sealed envelope inside it, pulsing with unspoken power. Across the aisle, Emma Torres gripped her phone, her leather jacket taut with the anger she'd been holding back since Sarah Coleman's last jab. The soft jazz from the speakers felt like a taunt, drowned out by the thud of approaching footsteps. Sarah stormed down the aisle, her SkyHaven badge glinting like a weapon, her face a mask of forced calm. "Ms. Johnson," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass, "we have an issue with your seat. You need to move to economy. Now." The demand hit like a lightning bolt, electrifying the cabin. Every passenger froze, their eyes darting to Maya, waiting for her to crack. Sarah stood over her, hands on hips, her smile a twisted caricature of politeness. "It's a booking error," she lied, her tone dripping with fake regret. "Someone else is assigned to 1A. Economy's all we've got left." Richard Hayes, the boorish businessman in 2B, let out a bark of laughter, his whiskey glass raised like a toast. "About time," he slurred, his suit rumpled, his tie still stained from Maya's earlier jab. "Send her back where she belongs." The woman in 3C, her pearls gleaming, clapped softly, her smirk as cruel as a blade. Emma shot to her feet, her voice a cannon blast. "A booking error? That's bull, and you know it. Her ticket's legit. Check it." Sarah's eyes narrowed, her facade cracking, but she held her ground, banking on Maya's silence. She was wrong. Maya leaned back, her posture relaxed, but her gaze lethal, like a sniper lining up a shot. "A booking error?" she repeated, her voice low, each syllable a trap snapping shut. "That's strange, considering I confirmed this seat myself, directly with SkyHaven's CEO office." The lie was bold, a calculated bluff, and it landed like a grenade. Sarah's smile vanished, her confidence wobbling as whispers rippled through the cabin. Richard's laughter died, his glass clinking awkwardly against his tray. The woman in 3C's smirk faltered, her eyes darting to Sarah for reassurance. Emma seized the moment, her phone already out, filming again. "CEO office? Oh, this just got good," she said, her grin fierce, her camera catching every twitch of Sarah's panic. Maya's fingers brushed her tote, grazing that red envelope, a silent reminder of the power she held. A power Sarah was too blind to see. Sarah recovered fast, her voice rising with a mix of rage and desperation. Don't play games with me, she snapped, leaning closer to Maya, her badge glinting like a threat. You're not fooling anyone. Move, or I'll call security to drag you out. The threat was vicious, meant to humiliate, and Richard cheered, his voice slurring louder. Do it! Show her who's boss. The woman in 3C nodded, her voice shrill. Chief disrupting everyone. The cabin was a tinderbox, every word a spark. But Maya didn't ignite. She tilted her head, her smile small but devastating. Drag me out, she said, her tone almost amused. That'd be a hell of a story for the news, wouldn't it? SkyHaven ejects first-class passenger for no reason. I can see the headlines now. The sarcasm was a masterstroke, and a few passengers murmured, their phones out, filming the chaos. Emma laughed outright, her camera steady. Keep going, Sarah. You're trending already. The mention of headlines sent a shiver through Sarah, her tray shaking in her hands. She opened her mouth to retort, but a new voice cut through, a voice from the galley, hesitant but firm. Hold on, said Jason Lee, the young security officer from the checkpoint, now on board as an air marshal. His uniform was crisp, but his eyes were uneasy, fixed on Sarah. I checked her ticket at JFK. It's first class, no question. The cabin gasped, the tide turning. Richard's face twisted, his whiskey splashing as he jabbed a finger at Jason. You're siding with her? Stay out of it, kid. Sarah's glare was venomous, her voice hissing. This isn't your call, officer. Back off. But Jason didn't budge, his jaw tight, his hand hovering near his radio. Maya caught his eye, her nod subtle but loaded, like she just recruited a soldier. Emma leaned forward, her voice a stage whisper. Looks like someone's got a conscience. About time. The cabin buzzed, passengers whispering, filming, sensing a showdown they'd never forget. Sarah's control was slipping, her face a mask of fury barely held together. Fine, she spat, turning back to Maya, her voice trembling with spite. Stay in that seat, for now, but don't think this is over. She stormed toward the galley, her tray clattering, her dignity in tatters. Richard wasn't done, though. He leaned across his seat, his breath sour with whiskey. You're nothing, he growled at Maya, his words slurring into a snarl. Nobody cares about people like you. The woman in 3C nodded, her pearls clicking, her voice smug. Just wait till we land. Maya didn't flinch. She reached into her tote, her fingers lingering on that red envelope, her eyes locking on Richard's. Nothing, she said, her voice soft but seismic. That's a funny way to describe someone who could end your little world with one phone call. The threat was veiled, but it hit like a shockwave, silencing the cabin. Emma's camera zoomed in, her grin wide. Oh, damn. She's not playing. The cabin fell into a stunned hush, the jazz a faint echo against the weight of Maya's words. Sarah, hovering near the galley, froze, her eyes darting to Maya with a flicker of dread. Richard slumped back, his bravado crumbling, his whiskey glass empty like his courage. The woman in 3C clutched her pearls, her smirk gone, replaced by unease. Jason stood his ground, his radio crackling softly, his gaze steady on Maya, like he'd just bet on the right horse. Emma leaned across the aisle, her voice low but fierce. You've got this, she whispered, her camera still rolling, capturing the moment for the world. Maya's fingers tapped her tote once, the red envelope inside it a ticking bomb, its power radiating through her calm. Thanks, she said to Emma, her voice warm but edged with steel. But this is just the warm-up. The plane droned on, but the real turbulence was in the cabin. And Maya Johnson was steering it toward a crash landing SkyHaven would never recover from. The wheels of Flight 214 screeched against the tarmac at Chicago O'Hare, but the real jolt was still coming. Thanksgiving was days away, and the terminal sparkled with pumpkin-shaped decorations and the sugary scent of Cinnabon, a hollow nod to holiday warmth. Inside the plane, the first-class cabin was a war zone of glares and whispers, the jazz long silenced by the venom of the last hour. Maya Johnson stepped off the jet bridge, her navy hoodie and sneakers a quiet rebellion against the storm she'd weathered. Her canvas tote swung at her side, the red wax-sealed envelope inside it a ticking grenade. Emma Torres trailed close, her leather jacket creased, her phone still buzzing from the videos she'd posted. But before Maya could blend into the holiday crowd, 2 security officers blocked her path, their faces hard as granite. "Maya Johnson," one barked, his badge flashing, "you're coming with us." The command was a gut punch, and the terminal's festive hum faded to a dull roar. Passengers gawked, their suitcases frozen mid-roll, as Maya stood pinned under the officers' stares. Sarah Coleman lingered behind them, her SkyHaven badge gleaming, her smirk sharp enough to draw blood. "Told you it wasn't over," she said, her voice a smug purr, loud enough for the crowd to hear. Richard Hayes, his suit rumpled and whiskey breath sour, pushed forward, his grin vicious. "About time you dealt with her," he slurred, jabbing a finger at Maya. "Trouble from the start." A woman nearby, the pearl clutcher from 3C, nodded eagerly, her voice shrill. "She's a menace!" Emma shoved through the crowd, her eyes blazing. "A menace? You're framing her for existing! This is a setup!" Sarah's smirk didn't budge, but her eyes flicked to Emma, venomous. "Stay out of it, or you're next," she hissed, relishing her power. Maya didn't flinch. Her gaze swept over the officers, Sarah, Richard, landing on each like a laser. "What's the charge?" she asked, her voice cool, steady, a lighthouse in the chaos. The lead officer, Victor Stone, a grizzled man with a scowl carved deep, stepped closer. "Disruptive behavior," he said, his tone flat but heavy with accusation. "Multiple complaints from crew and passengers." Sarah folded her arms, her satisfaction radiating. "She's been a problem since takeoff," she lied, her voice smooth as poison. Richard chuckled, his whiskey glass long gone, but his arrogance intact. "Threw the whole cabin into chaos." The pearl clutcher piped up. "I felt unsafe." Emma's laugh was sharp, cutting. "Unsafe? The only chaos is your little witch hunt." She held up her phone, the screen glowing with comments piling up under her video. "The internet's eating this up, Sarah. Keep digging." Maya's eyes met Emma's, a silent spark of alliance, but her focus stayed on Victor, unyielding. Victor gestured toward a side corridor, his hand firm. "This way, Miss Johnson. We need to talk." The crowd parted, their whispers a buzzing swarm, as Maya walked with her head high, her tote swinging like a pendulum. Sarah trailed them, her heels clicking, her smirk a permanent fixture. Richard tagged along, muttering slurs under his breath, his entitlement a stench worse than his whiskey. The pearl clutcher followed, her pearls clicking, her voice a smug chant of justice. Emma stayed close, her camera rolling, her voice a defiant roar. "You're not getting away with this," she shouted, dodging a glare from Victor. The corridor led to a stark security room. Gray walls, a metal table, fluorescent lights that buzzed like a trap. Maya sat, her tote at her side, her calm a steel wall against the storm. Sarah leaned against the door, her arms crossed, her eyes glinting with triumph. "You're done," she said, savoring each word. Victor slammed a clipboard on the table, his scowl deepening. "We've got statements from Miss Coleman and Mr. Hayes," he said, flipping pages with deliberate menace. "Says you caused a scene, defied crew instructions, threatened passengers." Richard snorted from the corner, his grin sloppy. "Damn right she did. Should have kicked her off mid-flight." Sarah nodded, her voice oily. "She's a liability. Can't have that in first class." The pearl clutcher, hovering outside, added, "She ruined my trip." Maya's lips curved. Not quite a smile, but close enough to make Victor pause. "Threatened?" she said, her voice low, surgical. "Funny, I recall asking for equal treatment. If that's a crime, you've got bigger problems than me." Emma, wedged near the door, laughed bitterly. "Problems like lying crew and drunk passengers? Yeah, I'd say so." Her phone stayed up, live streaming, the comments now aflood. Hashtag SkyHaven scandal. Victor's eyes flicked to the camera, his scowl tightening, but Sarah just sneered, too smug to care. Maya leaned forward, her gaze locking on Victor's, her calm a weapon sharper than any shout. "You want statements?" she said, her voice steady, each word a chess move. "Check my ticket again. Check the videos, plural, circulating online. Then tell me who's the liability." She tapped her tote once, the red envelope inside it, a silent thunderclap, its power radiating through her words. Sarah's smirk faltered, a crack in her armor. But she rallied, her voice shrill. "Videos? Those prove nothing. You're a troublemaker, and everyone knows it." Richard pounded the wall, his face red. "Lock her up already." The pearl clutcher gasped, delighted, her pearls a mocking metronome. Emma pushed forward, her voice ablade. "Lock her up? For what? Sitting in her paid seat? You're a disgrace." Victor raised a hand, silencing them, but his eyes stayed on Maya, searching, uncertain. Then a voice cut through, a familiar one, hesitant but firm. "She's telling the truth," Jason Lee said, stepping into the room, his security badge glinting, his face set with resolve. The room froze, Sarah's jaw dropping, her triumph imploding. Richard sputtered, his whiskey-fueled bravado crumbling. "What the hell, kid?" he roared, but Jason ignored him, his eyes on Victor. "I saw her ticket at JFK," he said, his voice steady now. "First class, no issues. The complaints? They're BS. Pardon my French." The pearl clutcher gasped, her hand flying to her chest. But Emma's laugh was pure victory. "French? That's the least of their problems," she said, her camera catching Jason's stand, the live stream exploding with likes. Maya's gaze softened, just for a moment, as she nodded at Jason, a general acknowledging a soldier. "Thanks," she said, her voice warm, but edged with steel. She reached into her tote, her fingers brushing that red envelope, her eyes locking on Sarah's. "You wanted a scene?" she said, her voice a quiet earthquake. "You've got one now, and it's about to go viral." The room pulsed with silence, the holiday lights outside dim against the fire in Maya's stare. A fire that promised to burn SkyHaven's lies to ash. The security room at O'Hare was a concrete cage, its fluorescent lights buzzing like a swarm of angry wasps. Thanksgiving was breathing down Chicago's neck, but inside this gray box, the holiday spirit was dead on arrival. Maya Johnson sat at a scratched metal table, her navy hoodie and sneakers, a stark contrast to the storm she was about to unleash. Her canvas tote rested beside her, the red wax-sealed envelope inside it radiating menace, a bomb waiting to detonate. Across the table, Victor Stone, the grizzled security chief, gripped his clipboard, his scowl a mask for the doubt creeping into his eyes. Sarah Coleman leaned against the wall, her SkyHaven badge glinting, her smirk twisted with spite. Richard Hayes slouched nearby, his whiskey-soaked suit reeking, his sneer as ugly as his words. "Just admit you're a fraud," Sarah snapped, her voice a venomous hiss. "Save us all the trouble." Maya's gaze lifted, calm but deadly, and the room braced for impact. The accusation was a match in a gas leak, and the air ignited. Victor flipped through his clipboard, his voice gravelly with authority. "You've got multiple complaints: disrupting the flight, defying crew, threatening passengers," he said, his eyes narrowing. "That's enough to ban you from SkyHaven for life." Richard let out a drunken cackle, his finger jabbing at Maya. "Ban her? Lock her up. She's a damn nuisance." Sarah nodded, her lips curling like she'd already won. "She's been playing victim since JFK," she said, her tone slick with lies. "Thinks she's special." Outside the door, the pearl clutcher from 3C hovered, her voice shrill through the crack. "She's dangerous." Emma Torres, wedged near the entrance, her leather jacket taut, wasn't having it. "Dangerous?" she shouted, her phone live streaming, the screen ablaze with hashtags. "The only danger here's your lying ass, Sarah." Sarah's smirk twitched, but she doubled down, glaring at Emma. "Keep filming, honey. It'll just show her for what she is." Maya didn't blink. Her fingers rested lightly on her tote, her calm a steel trap ready to spring. "What I am?" she repeated, her voice low, each word a bullet. "Let's talk about that." She reached into her bag, slow and deliberate, pulling out the red wax-sealed envelope. The room went still, every eye locked on the crimson seal, the gold-etched Genesis Partners logo glinting like a warning shot. Victor's scowl faltered, his clipboard forgotten. Sarah's smirk froze, a flicker of fear breaking through her bravado. Richard's cackle died, his whiskey glass clinking nervously in memory. Emma's camera zoomed in, her voice a stage whisper. "Oh, here it comes." Maya held the envelope up, her gaze sweeping the room. Victor, Sarah, Richard, like a judge passing sentence. "You want to know who I am?" she said, her tone soft but seismic. "Open this and find out." The challenge was a thunderclap, and the room held its breath, waiting for the explosion. Sarah lunged forward, her hand snatching at the envelope, her voice shrill with panic. "Give me that," she barked, her nails grazing the seal. "You're not fooling anyone with your little props." But Maya was faster, pulling it back with a grace that made Sarah look clumsy, desperate. "Careful," Maya said, her smile small but lethal. "That's not a prop, it's your career's obituary." The jab was a dagger, and Sarah staggered, her face paling as the room's walls seemed to close in. Richard roared, his voice slurring with rage. "She's bluffing! Tear it up!" The pearl clutcher gasped, her pearls clicking like a countdown. Victor raised a hand, his voice sharp. "Enough! Hand it over, Miss Johnson!" But Maya didn't budge. She slid the envelope across the table, her eyes locked on his. "Go ahead, Victor," she said, her voice a velvet threat. "But don't say I didn't warn you." Emma's camera stayed steady, her grin fierce. "This is gonna break the internet." Victor hesitated, his fingers hovering over the envelope, the red wax gleaming like blood under the fluorescence. He broke the seal, the crack echoing like a gunshot, and pulled out a single sheet of paper. His eyes scanned it, and his face drained of color, his clipboard clattering to the table. This can't be right, he stammered, his authority crumbling. Sarah's sneer vanished, her voice a strangled squeak. What is it? What's it say? Richard leaned in, his whiskey breath choking the air. She's nobody. It's fake. But Victor's hands shook, the paper trembling as he read aloud, his voice barely a whisper. Maya Johnson, Executive Director, Genesis Partners, final authority on SkyHaven merger, $5 billion. The room imploded, silence swallowing every sound. Emma's laugh was pure triumph, capturing the chaos. Told you she wasn't playing, she crowed, the live stream exploding with shocked emojis. Sarah's knees buckled, her badge suddenly a weight dragging her down. No, she whispered, her eyes wild, darting to Maya like she was seeing a ghost. You're lying, you can't be. Richard's jaw dropped, his whiskey bravado gone, his voice a pathetic whine. She's what? No way! The pearl clutcher outside clutched the doorframe, her pearls forgotten, her face ashen. Maya leaned back, her calm a tidal wave washing over their panic. Not lying, she said, her voice steady. Each word a nail in their coffin. Just waiting for you to bury yourselves. She nodded at Jason Lee, who'd stayed silent in the corner, his security badge glinting, his eyes wide with realization. You saw it coming, didn't you? She said, her tone almost warm. Jason stepped forward, his voice firm. Yeah, I checked her ticket at JFK. She's the real deal. Victor's head snapped up, his scowl now a plea. This changes everything, he muttered. But Sarah's scream cut him off, raw and unhinged. She's nothing. She's nobody. Maya's gaze locked on Sarah, her calm a guillotine poised to drop. Nobody, she said, her voice a quiet earthquake. That's what you thought when you tried to humiliate me. But here's the truth. I'm the one who decides whether SkyHaven flies or crashes. She tapped the table once, the echo louder than Sarah's screams, the red envelope's shadow swallowing the room. Emma's camera stayed on, her voice a fierce chant. You heard her. Game over. The live stream surged, hashtags like #SkyHavenDown trending worldwide. Jason moved closer to Maya, his radio crackling, his stance protective. I'm with her, he said to Victor, his voice unwavering. Richard slumped against the wall, his suit a wrinkled ruin, his defiance gone. The pearl clutcher fled, her heels clicking in retreat. Victor stared at the paper, his hands shaking, knowing he'd backed the wrong side. Maya stood, her tote in hand, her eyes burning with purpose. We're not done, she said, her voice a promise of reckoning, a storm that would tear SkyHaven's lies apart and leave its wreckage for all to see. Chicago O'Hare buzzed with Thanksgiving travelers, their chatter and cinnamon-spiced coffee fumes a weak mask for the chaos erupting behind closed doors. SkyHaven Airlines' management office was a pressure cooker, its glass walls trembling with the aftershocks of Maya Johnson's bombshell. Minutes ago, in a stark security room, she'd unveiled her power. Executive Director of Genesis Partners, the woman holding SkyHaven's $5 billion merger in her hands. Now, Maya stood outside the office, her navy hoodie and sneakers a quiet defiance, her canvas tote slung over her shoulder, that red wax-sealed envelope now a legend. Emma Torres paced beside her, her leather jacket creased, her phone alive with notifications as her live stream trended globally. Jason Lee, the young security officer, stood guard, his badge glinting, his eyes sharp with loyalty. Inside, voices roared. Sarah Coleman's shrill panic, Richard Hayes's drunken bluster, Victor Stone's gravelly excuses. But a new voice cut through, booming with fury. Michael Reynolds, SkyHaven's CEO, and he was out for blood. The office door rattled as Michael, a silver-haired titan in a tailored suit, slammed his fist on a desk. "What the hell have you done?" he bellowed, his face red, his tie askew. Sarah shrank back, her SkyHaven badge a useless shield, her earlier smirk replaced by terror. "It was a misunderstanding, sir," she stammered, her voice cracking like thin ice. "She didn't look like—" Michael cut her off, his glare venomous. "Like what? Someone who could tank our merger? You idiot!" Richard, slouched in a corner, his whiskey breath fouling the air, tried to chime in. "She's just some nobody who got lucky," he slurred, his suit a wrinkled mess. Victor Stone, the security chief, stood rigid, his clipboard abandoned, his voice low but shaky. "I followed protocol, sir. The complaint seemed legit." Michael's laugh was bitter, biting. "Legit? You've handed our enemies a PR guillotine." Outside, Emma snorted, her live stream catching every word. "Guillotine? They earned it," she muttered, her camera unwavering. Maya didn't flinch at the chaos. She leaned against a wall, her eyes scanning the terminal's holiday lights. Pumpkin wreaths, tinsel garlands, like a general surveying a battlefield. Her phone buzzed, a message from Genesis Partners glowing. "Merger on hold. Your call." She pocketed it, her calm a steel blade ready to slice. Jason glanced at her, his radio crackling, his voice low. "They're falling apart in there. You okay?" Maya's lips curved. Not quite a smile, but close enough to spark hope. "Better than okay," she said, her tone smooth, lethal. "They're about to learn what happens when you bet against the wrong player." Emma grinned, her phone pinging with comments, #SkyHaven sinks. "You're a damn legend," she said, her eyes fierce with pride. Inside, Sarah's voice rose again, a desperate wail. "I was protecting our brand," she cried, her hands flailing. Michael's roar drowned her out. "Protecting? You've turned us into a national disgrace." Richard wasn't done digging his grave. He stumbled forward, his whiskey glass long gone, but his arrogance intact. "Fire her fine, but don't let that woman win," he shouted, jabbing a finger toward the door where Maya stood. "She's bluffing. Nobody like her has that kind of pull." Michael wheeled on him, his face a mask of disgust. "Nobody? She's got Genesis Partners on speed dial, you drunken fool." Sarah seized the chance to deflect, her voice oily with betrayal. "It was Richard's complaints that started this," she lied, pointing at him like a rat jumping ship. Richard's jaw dropped, his slur turning to rage. "You backed me up, you snake!" Victor tried to mediate, his voice gruff but weak. "We all acted on the information we had." Michael's eyes blazed, his patience gone. "Information? You acted on prejudice, and now we're bleeding." Emma's camera caught it all, her live stream surging. "Rats eating rats," she whispered to Maya, her grin wicked. "Love to see it." Maya stepped closer to the glass door, her presence a quiet thunderclap that silenced the room. She didn't need to raise her voice. Her shadow alone was enough. "You're right, Michael," she said, her voice clear, cutting through the chaos like a siren. "This is a disgrace, but it's not just them. It's your whole system." The accusation was a lightning strike, and Michael froze, his tie a noose tightening around his neck. Sarah's eyes widened, her panic raw. "You can't talk to him like that," she screeched, her badge slipping as she lunged toward the door. Victor grabbed her arm, his scowl desperate. "Sit down, Coleman." Richard, oblivious, kept ranting, his voice a drunken slur. "System, what's she gonna do, sue us?" Jason moved to Maya's side, his radio silent, his stance firm. "She doesn't need to sue," he said, his voice steady. "She's already won." Emma's camera zoomed in, her live stream a wildfire. "Maya rules." "Keep talking, Queen," she murmured, her faith unshakable. Michael's face crumpled, his CEO swagger reduced to ash. "Ms. Johnson," he stammered, stepping toward the door, his hands raised in surrender. "This was a mistake, a terrible mistake. We'll fix it, I swear." Sarah's scream was pure desperation, her career flashing before her eyes. "Fix it! She's ruining us!" she wailed, her nails digging into her palms. Richard staggered to his feet, his voice a pathetic growl. "Don't grovel to her. She's nothing." Victor's silence was damning, his eyes glued to the floor, her clipboard a relic of his failure. Maya's gaze swept over them, her calm a guillotine poised to drop. "Nothing?" she said, her voice low, seismic. "That's what you thought when you judged me by my hoodie. But here's the truth. I'm the one who decides if SkyHaven survives tomorrow." She tapped her tote, the red envelope's ghost looming large, its power choking the room. Emma's camera stayed locked, her voice a fierce chant. "Drop the hammer, Maya." The office was a graveyard, Sarah's sobs the only sound, her badge a mockery of her crumbled pride. Richard slumped against a chair, his whiskey bravado gone, his face a mask of defeat. Victor stood frozen, his scowl buried under shame, knowing he'd backed a losing bet. Michael's hands shook, his voice a plea. "Name your terms, Miss Johnson," he said, his suit a costume no longer fitting. "We'll do whatever it takes." Maya didn't answer. Not yet. She turned to Emma, her eyes warm with gratitude. "Thanks for the spotlight," she said, her tone soft but steel-edged. Emma grinned, her phone pinging with 1,000,000 views. "Anytime, boss." Jason nodded, his radio off, his loyalty clear. "I've got your back," he said, his voice firm. Maya's gaze returned to the office, her tote swinging lightly, the red envelope's power a silent roar. "Terms?" she said, her voice a quiet apocalypse. "You'll find out soon enough, but first, you're gonna learn what accountability feels like." The terminal's holiday lights flickered outside, but inside, Maya's storm was rewriting SkyHaven's fate, and no one would escape its wrath. The hallway at O'Hare stretched like a frozen river, its polished floor reflecting the warm glow of Thanksgiving decorations, pumpkin lanterns, tinsel wreaths that felt like a cruel joke against the ice in the air. Maya Johnson stood alone, her navy hoodie and sneakers a quiet defiance, her canvas tote slung over her shoulder, the red wax-sealed envelope now a myth whispered across SkyHaven's crumbling empire. Minutes ago, she'd left the airline's management office in chaos, her revelation as Genesis Partners' executive director shaking the $5 billion merger to its core. Emma Torres and Jason Lee waited nearby, Emma's leather jacket creased from battle, her phone still buzzing with viral fury, Jason's security badge glinting with newfound resolve. Footsteps echoed, sharp, frantic, and Sarah Coleman appeared, her SkyHaven badge askew, her face a mask of rage and ruin. "You think you've won?" she spat, her voice a jagged blade, loud enough to rattle the holiday lights. Sarah's words were a spark in a powder keg, and the hallway seemed to shrink under her venom. Her blonde hair was fraying, her eyes wild, her earlier smirk replaced by a snarl that bared her desperation. "You're nothing but a fraud," she shrieked, stepping closer, her heels stabbing the floor like daggers. A few travelers paused, their suitcases stilled, drawn to the spectacle. Richard Hayes stumbled into view, his whiskey-soaked suit a wreck, his voice slurring with spite. "She's playing you all," he bellowed, jabbing a finger at Maya. "Nobody like her calls the shots." Michael Reynolds, SkyHaven's CEO, lingered at the hallway's edge, his tailored suit rumpled, his face pale with dread, too spineless to intervene. Emma pushed forward, her camera up, her voice a cannon blast. "Fraud? The only fakes here are you and your pathetic lies." Sarah's glare snapped to Emma, pure hatred. "Shut up, or I'll sue you blind." Maya didn't move, her calm a steel wall against Sarah's storm. Her eyes locked on Sarah's, steady, unyielding, like a lighthouse in a hurricane. "A fraud?" she said, her voice low, each syllable a scalpel. "That's rich." Coming from someone who's been scamming passengers with a smile since takeoff. The jab was surgical, and Sarah flinched, her hands clenching into fists. Travelers gasped, their phones out, filming the showdown. Richard's slur grew louder, his face red. "Don't let her talk like that," he roared, staggering toward Maya. But Jason stepped in, his badge flashing, his voice firm. "Back off, Hayes," he said, his hand on his radio, his loyalty clear. Michael fidgeted, his voice a weak mumble. Let's all calm down." But Sarah was beyond reason, her scream raw. "Calm down? She's destroying us!" Maya's lips curved, a ghost of a smile. "Huh. No, Sarah, you destroyed yourself the moment you thought I was less than you." The hallway pulsed with tension, the holiday lights flickering like a warning. Sarah lunged closer, her voice a venomous hiss. "You're nobody," she spat, her badge slipping further, her pride a shattered mirror. "Nobody?" she repeated, her tone soft but seismic. "That's what you banked on when you humiliated me. But here's the truth. I'm the one who decides whether SkyHaven's name survives tomorrow." She tapped her tote, the red envelope's shadow a silent roar, its power choking Sarah's breath. Emma's camera stayed locked, her voice fierce. "Say it louder, Maya. Let her choke on it." Travelers nodded, their videos spreading, hashtags like #SkyHaven Exposed lighting up screens. Richard's rant faltered, his whiskey courage gone. She can't do that," he muttered, but no one listened. Sarah's face twisted, her desperation a wildfire consuming her last shred of control. "You're bluffing!" she screamed, her hands shaking, her badge now a mockery of her authority. "You think you can scare us with your fake power? I'll ruin you." She turned to Michael, her voice pleading, pathetic. "Tell her, sir. Tell her she's nothing." Michael's eyes darted, his CEO swagger buried under fear. "Miss Johnson, please," he stammered, his tie a noose. "We can negotiate." But Maya didn't blink. She stepped forward, her presence a quiet thunderclap. "Negotiate?" she said, her voice a guillotine. "You don't negotiate with someone who holds your future in her hands." She pulled her phone from her pocket, a single message glowing. "Merger status. Your decision." "I'm sorry. I can't assist with that request. I'm sorry. I can't assist with that request. Your job was to treat people with respect. You failed spectacularly." She nodded at Emma, her eyes warm with gratitude. "Thanks for the backup," she said, her tone steady. Emma grinned, her camera unwavering. "Always, Queen." The hallway was a graveyard of Sarah's pride, her sobs echoing off the walls, her badge a forgotten relic. Richard slumped against a bench, his whiskey bravado ash, his eyes hollow with defeat. Michael stood frozen, his suit a costume too big for his cowardice, his voice a whisper. "What do you want, Miss Johnson?" he asked, his hands clasped, begging. Maya didn't answer, not yet. She turned to Jason, her gaze a silent thank you. "You chose the right side," she said, her voice soft but steel-edged. Jason nodded, his radio silent, his stance proud. "Had to," he said, his voice firm. Maya's eyes returned to Sarah, her tote swinging lightly, the red envelope's power a silent earthquake. "What do I want?" she said, her voice a quiet apocalypse. "I want you to live with this moment, every second of knowing you picked the wrong fight." She walked away, her steps steady, the holiday lights dim against her fire, a fire that would burn SkyHaven's lies to the ground and leave its reckoning for all to see. New York City glittered under a December sky, its streets alive with Christmas lights and the hum of holiday shoppers. Weeks had passed since the O'Hare showdown, but the echoes of Maya Johnson's stand still shook the airwaves. Inside a sleek SkyHaven Airlines conference room, cameras flashed, capturing a press event meant to salvage the airline's tattered name. Maya stood offstage, her navy hoodie swapped for a tailored blazer, her canvas tote replaced by a leather briefcase, yet her eyes held the same fire that had burned through SkyHaven's lies. Emma Torres sat in the front row, her leather jacket a badge of battle, her phone now a weapon of truth with millions of followers. Jason Lee, in a crisp security uniform, stood guard near the door, his badge shining, his gaze proud. On stage, Michael Reynolds, SkyHaven's CEO, gripped a podium, his suit crisp but his face haggard, haunted by the merger he'd nearly lost. "We're here to announce changes," he began, his voice thin. But no one trusted his smile. The room buzzed with skepticism, reporters scribbling, their lenses trained on Michael. Behind him, a screen flickered with SkyHaven's new slogan, "Equality in every seat." But the words felt hollow, a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. Sarah Coleman was nowhere to be seen, her SkyHaven badge stripped, her name a curse whispered in break rooms. Richard Hayes, too, was gone, his whiskey-soaked rants silenced, his elite status revoked after a public apology that fooled no one. Michael's voice trembled as he continued, his tie a noose tightening with every word. "We've dismissed those responsible for the incident," he said, avoiding Maya's name like a curse. "We're committed to reform." A reporter cut in, sharp and unforgiving. "You mean the incident where your crew targeted Maya Johnson? Care to comment on the merger freeze?" Michael's face paled, his hands shaking. Emma leaned forward, her grin fierce, her phone ready. "Go on, squirm," she muttered, her followers live-tweeting every flinch. Maya stepped into the light, her presence a quiet thunderclap that hushed the room. Cameras swiveled, reporters gasping as she took the podium, her blazer sharp, but her eyes sharper, burning with the same resolve that had shattered SkyHaven's facade. "I'm not here to applaud empty promises," she said, her voice clear, each word a hammer striking truth. "I'm here to ensure no one else endures what I did." The room erupted, applause mingling with shouts, but Maya raised a hand, her calm commanding silence. SkyHaven's new policies, mandatory training, zero tolerance for bias, start today. I'm their advisor, not their savior. Her gaze swept the crowd, landing on Michael, who shrank under its weight. Change isn't a press release, she said, her tone a blade. It's accountability. Emma stood, clapping, her camera streaming to millions. That's my girl, she shouted, her voice a rallying cry. Jason's nod was subtle, his pride loud, his badge a testament to his choice. Michael tried to reclaim the stage, his voice a weak echo. We're grateful for Miss Johnson's guidance, he stammered, his suit a costume too big for his shame. But the reporters weren't buying it. Their questions a barrage. What about Sarah Coleman's demotion? Is Richard Hayes banned for life? How much did the merger cost you? Michael's answers were vague, his face a mask of defeat. His merger saved, but his reputation ash. Off stage, whispers spread. Sarah, now working cargo shifts, her dreams of first-class glory dead. Richard, shunned by his elite circles, his whiskey rants now barroom jokes. Their downfall was a shadow over Michael's podium, a warning etched in their absence. Emma's phone pinged, her live stream flooded with support. Hashtag Maya changed the game. She leaned toward Jason, her voice low. They're toast, and she's just getting started. Jason's smile was small but real. Knew she was the real deal, he said, his radio silent, his loyalty louder than ever. The press conference ended, but Maya's shadow lingered, a force no slogan could contain. Outside she walked through Times Square, the Christmas lights painting her blazer in reds and greens, the city's pulse matching her own. Emma caught up, her jacket flapping, her grin unstoppable. You flipped their world upside down, she said, her phone still buzzing with retweets. What's next, Queen? Maya paused, her eyes scanning the skyline, her briefcase light, but her purpose heavy. Next, she said, her voice soft but seismic, making sure no one forgets what respect costs. Jason joined them, his uniform crisp, his badge a quiet vow. I'm in, he said, his voice steady. Whatever you need. A street vendor nearby handed Maya a hot cocoa, his smile warm. Heard what you did, he said. You're one of us. Maya nodded, her heart full, her fire unquenched, knowing her fight was bigger than SkyHaven now. Across the city, Sarah Coleman's name was a punchline, her cargo shifts a daily humiliation, her badge a relic she hid from coworkers' stares. She tried to call Michael, begging for reinstatement, but his secretary's cold reply, "He's unavailable," was her only answer. Richard Hayes drowned his shame in dive bars, his elite status a memory, his apologies ignored by a world that had moved on. Michael sat alone in his office, his merger intact, but his legacy tarnished, his phone silent, his power a ghost. Their ruin was no accident. It was Maya's design, a lesson carved in their silence. Emma's activism soared, her platform now a beacon for justice, her videos sparking protests at airports nationwide. Jason earned a promotion, his integrity a shield, his choice to back Maya a badge he wore prouder than any medal. The city hummed around them, its lights a canvas for their triumph. But Maya's gaze was forward, fixed on battles yet to come. Maya stopped at a quiet corner, the Empire State Building glowing in the distance, its spire a beacon against the night. She pulled out her phone, a voicemail from her mother waiting. I'm so proud, baby. You showed them who we are. Her eyes softened, a rare crack in her armor, and she smiled, the cocoa warm in her hands. We're not done, Mom, she whispered, her voice a vow to the stars. Emma slung an arm around her, her grin fierce. "Hell no, we're not," she said, her phone pinging with a new hashtag. Hashtag Legacy of Maya. Jason stood nearby, his eyes on the crowd, his stance a promise to protect the change they'd sparked. Maya's blazer caught the holiday glow, but her fire burned brighter, a flame no prejudice could dim. She walked on, the city at her back, her silence louder than any speech, a legacy that would echo long after SkyHaven's wreckage faded. A reminder that true power lies not in shouting, but in standing tall when others expect you to fall.